Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new revenge stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first one is titled, Why You Shouldn't Park Like a Jerk at the Phone Company. My uncle told me this story of sweet revenge that took place when he worked for the phone company. One of the linemen had just bought a brand new pickup truck that he was a little too proud of. So proud, in fact, that he parked it taking up 2 spaces, backed up against the curb. His co-workers asked him nicely to stop, but every day, he would still back up against the curb taking up 2 spaces. Every day, the last person to get to work had to park across the street. There were exactly as many parking spaces as employees. People at the office got more and more upset, but he still proudly parked his rig on the line, backed against the curb. After a couple of weeks of this, his co-workers were seriously considering having it towed. But then, one day, one of the other linemen made a few astute observations. The truck had a chrome step bumper, with a hole for a trailer hitch ball. The truck was always backed all the way against the curb. The other side of the curb was a lawn. The hole in the bumper was always centered over the lawn. The phone company always had lengths of rebar lying around. And then, a leap of logic, if he likes his truck parked there so much, it can just stay there permanently. He grabbed a 6-foot length of stout 3/4 rebar and a hammer, stuck it through the hole in the bumper, and drove it all the way into the ground at a 45-degree angle, leaving about 6 inches of rebar sticking out through the hole. Pegged the truck to the ground like a tent. Then everyone waited with glee for Jerk to get off work and attempt to leave. The guy got back to the office, clocked out, got in his truck, fired it up, shifted into gear, and nothing. Gunned the engine, nothing. He finally floored it, doing the very smokiest epic burnout right in place, and not moving an inch. Everyone in the office was gathered around the window just cackling. Finally he got out of the truck, looking all over it, trying to figure out why his brand new truck will drive but not move. Then he noticed the rebar sticking out of the hole in the bumper, and launched into a blue flame of furious swearing. Inside, the cackling intensified. Then he had an idea. He got out his jack and stuck it under the back of the truck, thinking he could lift the truck off the tent stake that held it to the ground. No dice, the angle of the rebar made sure it didn't go anywhere. It was nailed down so tight he couldn't get one click out of the jack. He took down the jack, threw it in the bed of the truck, and sat on the curb, dejected, as every last one of his co-workers busted a gut on the other side of the window. His truck was so immovably stuck in place, he finally had to call a friend with a torch to cut his truck loose. The next day, and every day to follow, he parked like a normal guy. The next one is titled, My Wife Abandoned Us. My wife and I started dating our senior year in high school. We went to the same college and married shortly afterwards. We tried to have kids for 2 years, but we were unsuccessful due to my low sperm count. We decided on adoption instead, and we were fortunate to be able to adopt 2 sisters, Margie, who was 6 months old, and Paige, who was a little less than 2 years old. Our lives went from night to day. When we first brought the girls home, my wife jumped right into the role as a mother. She did their hair, made them breakfast, and did everything a devoted mother would do. As the years went on, our daughters were more involved in more activities like dance, gymnastics, soccer, etc. We both worked and balanced our schedules to ensure the kids were where they needed to go. We even found time to go camping at least once a month when the weather was nice. I thought everything was going great. We hardly ever argued, and we spent most of the nights watching movies together. All of this changed 2 days after Paige turned 10. My wife just decided to up and leave us one day. To paraphrase the note she left, I'm sorry, I need to move on. Things didn't turn out the way I expected them to be. At first, I thought she was being coerced or kidnapped, so I sent her a text, basically asking if she was okay, and she responded back, yes, banana split. Banana split was the safe word we came up with years prior to ensure that everything was okay regarding her or our daughters. My wife worked in public relations for a medical equipment company. I called the company and they told me that she had given her 2 weeks' notice and came in yesterday to clean her desk out. That must have been the darkest and lowest point of my life, to know that she had planned this in advance and even prior to our daughter's birthday party. But equally as bad, she didn't even say goodbye to our daughters. I told them that mommy was taking a vacation, but I knew she wasn't. A month had gone by and I didn't hear a word from her. She even had disconnected her phone line the day after she left. By now I had taken on every last responsibility as far as ensuring the kids' lives weren't disrupted any further. The worst part of my wife leaving is when the kids would cry every night. I never really knew what to tell them. Weeks went by, then months, and now it's been 2 years. Every holiday that went by and the now 2 going on 3 birthdays being missed and not a single word from my wife. My wife never called or sent letters, she just completely abandoned us. I asked everyone we knew if there was something that I completely overlooked and everyone thought we were textbook husband and wife. To try to make everything better for my kids, the 3 of us made plans to go to Disney World. It was coming close to my wife's 3-year abandonment and I really wanted to get their minds off of her. So we actually drove down to Orlando from Connecticut. It was nice spending time with the kids in the car. We planned on spending 2 days in the Magic Kingdom and 1 day at Epcot. The first day at Magic Kingdom was great. My kids had never been there before and they were just thrilled to see everything. It was a week away from Christmas and the whole park was really nicely decorated for the season. We stayed at Disney's Contemporary Resort and the next day was going equally as good. The day was almost done and we were at the restaurant where we made dinner reservations. The restaurant was known for having Disney characters come around and greet the kids at the tables. Everything was going well at dinner, until Margie saw someone dancing with Minnie Mouse, about 10 tables away. She said, "Look Daddy, it's Mommy dancing with Minnie Mouse." My wife was holding a toddler and she looked like she was pregnant. My kids ran over to her thinking this was part of a surprise. My wife was also with a man who I never met. My wife talked to our kids for not more than 60 seconds and left them because she saw a parade come by the window. I watched my wife say goodbye to our daughters and then rush out the door. She stood in front of the restaurant and danced with her toddler. My kids came back to my table thinking their mother would come back in to see them, but she never did. She just casually walked away, with her new family, and didn't once turn around. My kids eventually caught on to what was going on and they were crying and they looked totally rejected. I was in total shock. After consoling my daughters, I made a mad dash to confront my wife. The park was just too big and she was gone. I've known my wife for half of my life and she couldn't even acknowledge me. If our kids didn't go over to my wife, then my wife probably would have left without saying hi to our kids. At this point, I am boiling over in anger over my wife's rejection of our kids. It didn't take a genius to figure out that she wanted her own kids and was prepared to erase out our adopted kids. My kids have only known one mother their whole life. To them, there was no difference between a birth mum or an adoptive mum. All it did was make it much worse to see their mother with a new family who had zero interest in them. I had then decided to make it my only ambition in life to completely ruin my wife's new life. I had lied to the restaurant manager where my wife was seen, and I was able to get the name that her table was reserved under. I learned that she changed her first and last name. She was still married to me, so legally she couldn't get remarried. I did an exhaustive search and was able to find out where she was living with her new family. Little did my wife know that I kept all of the text and emails that she sent to me. We were married and best friends for years, so she sent me unfiltered messages for years. I sifted through thousands of messages and found the most unscrupulous, racist, and most hateful messages. My wife was now working in the public relations department for a very large pharmaceutical company. I posted her emails and text messages online for everyone in the world to read. Then, I created a ton of fake social media accounts and bombarded her company with outrage over how they would hire someone like my wife. Her company took the bait and she was fired, which eventually made the news and she was labeled a Karen. Things really started to unravel for my wife. Her face was all over the internet for being a racist and a bigot. Her new man even got pressured out of his job because of his association with her. He eventually left her and now she is alone. The courts sided with the father and considered my wife too unstable and she lost custody of her kids. I found a new soulmate through my job and she loved my kids and my kids loved her. Christmas was rolling around again and I paid top dollar to get the best card done of the new 4 of us. The first person I addressed the Christmas card to was my wife, who was now completely alone working part-time delivering pizzas. I wrote on the card, "I hope you're happy in your new life." The last one is titled, Searching for Legal Justice. So this is long because the best revenge stories are. Most of the events also took place a long time ago, but my anger still burns and my revenge still flows. In 2007 I purchased a 2-unit apartment building in the small East Coast city I live in. It was the second rental property I purchased, so while certainly not a professional landlord, I was not entirely new to the business. When I first moved back to this city after college, I had purchased a single-family condemned foreclosure that I fixed up and moved into. I had also purchased another 2-unit property a year before, so I was starting to get familiar with the building permit process, rental permits, etc. The new 2-unit property was on the corner of what we shall call Fruit and Nut Street. It had a 3-bedroom unit on the combined second and third floors and a studio apartment on the first floor. The upper unit was empty and needed some work, and I spent a few months fixing it up and getting it ready to rent out. The first floor unit was pretty much a disaster and occupied by this burnt-out hippie everyone in town called Zag. His last name was Zagala. My initial plan was to boot him out and turn this into a really nice studio, and even possibly move into that unit myself instead of living in my large 4-bedroom single-family house with roommates. After getting the building and getting to know Zag, I realized he was pretty down on his luck, could not afford another apartment, and really did not want to try to find another place to live after being in this unit for close to 10 years. I felt bad about giving Zag the boot, as I knew he would never find another place to live in this city anywhere near the price he was paying me. I had also recently got a new day job, so was now busier and was not that excited about having to spend every evening and weekend fixing up the unit. Zag was a decent guy, and when he was late with rent you knew it was because he did not have the money, not because he was trying to screw you over. A few times I ended up having him do some painting on the property instead of paying rent. I also gave him a key to the second floor unit, and he acted as an on-site handyman, flipping breakers, changing bulbs and other random maintenance on the upper unit as needed. This worked out okay for me the first 2 years I had the unit, and also for the tenants I found for the upstairs unit. In 2009 my upstairs tenants moved out, and I posted a Craigslist ad for the 3-unit apartment. So Fruit and Nut Streets are not exactly the best streets in town, but they are close, about 4 blocks, to what we will call wannabe Ivy League University, or WILU for short. WILU is one of the most expensive university in the country. Most of their students lived in campus housing, but juniors and seniors could live off campus as the school did not have enough housing for all their students. As a landlord, you had to get your units approved by the school's housing board if you wanted to rent to active students. This is something I had never done with any of my other units, as other landlord friends in town all seemed to agree that WILU students were just about the worst tenants you could possibly rent to. The school was, and is, pretty much populated by super privileged children who failed to get into real Ivy League schools. So 2 guys from WILU end up coming and looking at the place. Let's call them Mex and Cuban. They are both foreign students on scholarship and really want the unit, as it's just about the cheapest unit available in the immediate area of the school. They are both working while in school and did not fit the normal WILU profile. They have another female student friend, let's call her Lily, who they lined up to be their 3rd roommate. I decide to give it a go and start the paperwork with the university to get the unit approved with the school housing board. I meet them at the unit a second time so that Lily has a chance to check the place out and introduce them to Zag, letting them know they can contact him if for some reason they can't get a hold of me in an emergency. Phone numbers are traded all around, rental price was finalized, all is agreed to. 2 weeks later the unit is approved by the school housing board. They did an on-site visit and required me to modify my lease to only run for a school year and not a calendar year. I knew Mex and Cuban planned to stay over the summer despite only having a 9-month lease, and hoped to find another roommate with Lily moved out at the end of the school year. Turns out Lily's, whose family lives in the next state over, father is a lawyer. We will call him Mr. Shade. He has some requested changes to the lease. I emailed everyone. They are a bit picky, but nothing crazy, so I make the changes requested. I receive first month and security deposit checks from each student individually and hand over the keys. Mex and Cuban start moving in the same day as they are already in town, and Lily would be moving in the following week closer to the start of school. All is good. The following week I receive a phone call from Mr. Shade. Mr. Shade lets me know that his daughter will not be moving into this unit. He finds it's absolutely unacceptable that another tenant would have a key to this unit. That this is breaking some law. Further, that I don't have a city housing permit and that this renders the lease void, and that I need to return his daughter's rent and deposit or he will be starting legal action against me. He states that he is a lawyer and can sue me and it won't cost him anything to start procedures. I argue that a maintenance man having access, keys to a unit is certainly not unheard of and that I certainly do have a valid and current housing permit. He lets me know that I have until the end of the week to return his daughter's funds or he will start legal action and hangs up. At this point I am both confused and upset. I call Mex and Cuban and they let me know that it seems Lily found another apartment with other friends she likes better. So that explains why she wants out of the lease. I call the city, ask if they have a current housing permit for 124 Fruit Street. They do not. I ask if they have one for 123 Nut Street and they say they do for the 2 units. And that explains why her dad could not verify the housing permit as it was under the other address on the property. I call my lawyer and ask what he thinks I should do and he suggests I should probably just return the money and wipe my hand of the mess, and that explains why I cave in like a little witch and mail a check for Lily's rent and deposit to her parents' house. I knew I was legally in the right to keep the rent and deposit and even to require that she pay the whole rent. But his threat to initiate legal action worked as intended and scared me off. It made me really angry that the legal system can be used a threat this way. Mex and Cuban managed to find another roommate for the school year and ended up staying in the apartment for about 2 years total. Overall they were great tenants and things worked out well in the end. I was still out $300 for the first month's rent and still upset, and that's where this story ends. Except not really, as this is pro-revenge. This whole time I have been working my regular day job. My day job at the time was doing search engine optimization for a very large e-commerce operation. I had a daily budget of over $30,000 a day for just paid Google ads. I had a staff of 3 in the department I managed and was damn good at my job. I made my corporate overlord a crap ton of money and my corporate overlords treated me well. I was well versed in both white hat and black hat SEO techniques. I had a virtual army of offshore link builders and article writers. During my conversations with Mr. Shade, I naturally ended up doing a Google search on him at some point and was quite surprised by the weird results I got. On the first page of results on a search for his name, very distinct name, not likely to be another person in that states with this first-last combo, I found the web page for his legal business, but also a lot of odd directory links. All containing backlinks to his website. Not legitimate legal directory ones like you might expect, but a bunch of crappy shady-looking directory listings. With my experience with SEO, it was immediately clear that someone was intentionally attempting to manipulate results for searches on his name. Let's look at page 2 of the search results, more shady directory links. What's going on here? Page 3 is another set of 10 shady directory links. It almost looks like someone is trying to intentionally bury a certain result. Page 4, more shady directory links. Page 5, further down the search results that any normal person would ever bother to look, more directory links. Page 6 and 7, more directory links, and then there it was on page 8. Oh my good God. What I found was a caselaw.findlaw.com filing related to his suspension from the bar. Using that as a starting point, I was able to find the transcript of the entire proceeding against him. Turns out he basically lost a client a case by telling that client he was filling paperwork related to their lawsuit, but he never actually did anything. This client of his ended up losing the case in summary judgment as Mr. Shade never responded to any court filings despite telling his client all was good. More Google searching and it turns out there are lots of copies of this judgment and related disbarment, suspension proceedings on various legal archives on the internet. His punishment was suspension from the state bar for 6 months. I went through all the related results I could find and selected the 10 best. Ones that contained his name in the title, ones that contained a concise summary of the charges against him, ones that detailed his negligence, ones that detailed his disbarment, etc. Basically selecting the ones that reflected the most negativity the most clearly. I then spent the next month building links and pushing these 10 results up the search ranking. Start with some mid-quality articles linking to my 10 selected pages with his name as the link text. About 30 articles for each link, around 300 in total, written and published to various article sites. all written by some fabulous East Indian SEO firms I was familiar with. Next step, create about 3,000 forum directory links pointing to those articles. This linking pyramid technique was working pretty well at the time. Oh, you like directory links, Mr. Shade? How about 1,000 directory pages with your profile, but these all happen to link to my 10 selected target pages instead of to your website? 2 months in, I had 5 of my 10 selected targets on the first page for any combination of his name and lawyer. 3 months in, I noticed someone else was building more links to his website and creating more directory links. It was nice to know someone had noticed and was trying to reverse my efforts. 3 months in, and his own website no longer showed up on the first page. It took a little more work, but after about 5 months of slow, steady and cheap link building, some of my chosen results were also showing up for the law firm he worked for. Can you imagine being a law firm and anytime a potential client does a Google search for your firm, the results are filled with info about one of your attorneys being suspended for negligence? At one point I was thinking I might email him and let him know I do SEO and offer him my services for a monthly retainer at the same monthly rate his daughter's rent would have been. In the end, I decided it was best to just keep building links and never let him know it was me. I quit doing SEO work about 5 years ago, but to this day the majority of the results on the first page of a search for his name are the articles I selected and pushed up there. His own legal site is now back on the first page, but between 2 summaries of his suspension. 8 years later and my revenge is still working. Good times. Thanks for listening.